We are live. So just waiting for people to join. Hopefully everyone had a shower, had some food, coffee, little exercise. All right. Okay, excellent. I'm going to share my screen again. Let me know if it goes black. Is it okay? The weird thing is on my side, even when it goes black, when I look at it, it shows it as being active. So all good, wonderful. Okay. Is the sound quality okay? Where I'm standing in the room, you're probably getting a bit of an echo, but I don't think I can avoid that. Excellent. Good. Okay. So once again, we are talking about standing meditation, but the actual technique doesn't have to be done standing. It's just a technique for body scanning. And I've already explained why body scanning is very, very important. And in particular, if you're trying to advance maybe through stage 3 of the 9 stages of calm abiding up to around stage 5, body scanning is an excellent technique. I've also described why I think it's important to do practices standing and also walking, and we'll get to it, but working and so forth, because as a city-dwelling layperson, you just don't have enough time to be doing formal seated practice all the time. So if you want to make progress, you need to learn how to bring more and more of your life into the active process of training your mind. And as you do this, it's a bit like how to say, it's a bit like being on a boat. You know, if the capabilities you have are determined by how high the water is, and you're waiting for every time you sit down, you're waiting for the tide to come in to lift the boat up, then when you sit down having done nothing for a couple of days, and then you do 20 minutes of practice on your cushion, and then you're going, well, why isn't this going well? You know, as opposed to you let some water in during that practice, and then you're going to the store and you're letting a little more water in because you're doing standing practice, and then on your way to the car you're doing walking practice, and then while you're working you're opening the sense gates, and the tide the tide just keeps raising the boat higher and higher and higher, and there's less and less time where the tide is carrying water back out. Yeah, and therefore the boat is rising and rising and rising. Okay. So having now described why I think it's important, let's get to the actual practice. So the posture that I've described for standing practice will allow you to stand for probably around 25 minutes pretty comfortably. I say pretty comfortably because standing practice, as a general rule, is not comfortable. It's entirely normal for you to have burning sensations in your feet and your legs, for your legs to shake, for there to be pins and needles feelings sticking into your feet and your legs, and these are all completely normal parts of standing practice. That being said, if you experience persistent pain after doing a session, then you need to do less practice. Okay? So one is the pain of the practice, which is just a normal part of doing standing practice, especially if you're releasing everything down, which we will be. The other is you're injuring yourself. And it should within a short period of time be clear to you which one you're doing, because if it's been 30 minutes or an hour since you did your practice and you're still having some kind of weird pain that developed during your practice, then you've done too much or you've done it improperly. Okay? So don't injure yourself. This is not a pain endurance contest. This is meditation training. And this part of the training, unfortunately, or can, but there's a difference between something being uncomfortable and something being an injury, and you need to be very clear about that. And I'm not with you, so you have to decide on your own whether or not something is just painful or if it's leading towards an injury. So in this practice, we're factors that I was discussing before. Remember, in the discussion of the 9 stages of meditation, the 2 mental factors that you're building up strength with: mindfulness and introspection, which I have translated here as recollection and vigilance. I've also half a dozen other things: non-forgetfulness and meta-awareness. But these are all referring to the same 2 mental factors. One mental factor, recollection, is the one that remembers what you intended to do. So that is active memory and long-term memory. The other mental factor, vigilance or alertness, as I was calling it yesterday, is the mental factor that's aware of how you're doing something. So just to prime your brain one more time, mindfulness is remembering to hold the cup. If I forget to actively hold the cup, I drop it. Vigilance or alertness is aware of how I'm holding the cup. Am I holding it tightly and shaking my hand? Am I getting sleepy and almost dropping it, etc.? So vigilance is aware of how you're doing it and the quality of how you're doing it. And recollection or mindfulness is remembering is remembering to not let it go. So here in body scanning, you're actually cultivating both of these qualities to a high degree. So as we're transitioning from the 3rd stage of calm abiding up through the 4th and 5th, potentially a while, but potentially progressing through those using this exercise, both of these mental qualities. Key here, when you are observing these sensations, mentally observing the sensations in your body, because we're going to be scanning the body, you're not visualizing anything. So we're going to be observing the body from the feet and coming up to the head. And then I think today we'll go from the head back down, and we'll just sort of sweep the body like this. Okay? And as we sweep through the body like this, we are merely observing as non-conceptually as we can, although there is some conceptual activity in this exercise. Simply choosing a chunk of your body to look at is a conceptual decision. However, within the chunk you have decided to observe, you're not further dividing that up and going, oh, well, what is that a muscle? Is that a blood vessel I'm feeling? What is that tingling sensation? I wonder if I should see the doctor about this, right? So you don't want to add more conceptual layers. You don't want to visualize anything. And then you don't want to mentally elaborate on what you have observed. So the exercise very simply is you place the mind on the actual tactile sensations. So in the same way you place the mind on the breath, yeah? You place your mind on the actual tactile sensations that you're experiencing on the skin and below the skin. Okay? I know this is not news to those of you who have been doing this and other things with me for a while, but for some other people who join in later or watch later, this will be new information. So in the same way that in the first exercise, we placed our attention here on the nostril and we were just observing that one little tiny patch of skin, that was the object of meditation. The object of meditation now is I'm going to observe the sensations in the hand. Then I'm going to observe the sensations in the wrist. Then I'm going to observe the sensations in the first part of the forearm. Then I'm going to observe the sensations here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and so on and so forth. So we're not visualizing, we're not imagining, we're not mentally elaborating. We are merely non-conceptually, or as minimally conceptually as possible, observing the parts of the body that we have mentally decided to focus upon. Okay, let me share one more time. Let me know if it goes. Are we good? I will take that as a yes. Okay. The next, use an even speed. So, beginning of this exercise, there, but text is unreadable. Okay, I'll make it a little bigger. So, the first, yeah, I feel you. I feel your pain. All right. So, the second critical element of the instructions, you want to use an even speed. Remember, you're trying to learn how to control your mind. So if you were to go, oh, okay, I'm looking at my hand. Oh, the hand's really interesting. I'm going to watch the hand for a while. Wow, look at the hand. That's cool. Oh, the wrist is kind of boring. Nah, okay. Well, yeah, the forearm's interesting. Why is it tingling like that? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, like if all you're doing is chasing attachment and aversion, remember these two big problems that your mind has, if all you're doing is chasing excitement and running away from things you don't like and getting bored with other parts that you think are kind of you're indifferent about, you're not actually learning to train the mind in concentration using this exercise. Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. So to say this one more time, you need to, especially in the beginning, use an even speed of observation so that you're not lingering on things you like, and you're not running away from things you don't like, and you're not sort of running away from things that make you bored either. That you're just simply going through the body with an even pace. That's what you're intending to do. Okay? I'm just gonna cover this briefly right now because it will be important later, but I'll cover it again later. So even according to Western cognitive psychology, there's something called, I think that's called emotional body mapping. And if you look up the literature on this, across cultures globally, when you ask people, can you just point to on like a graphic of a human body, can you just point to where you feel certain emotions? When you do that, you find that across the entire planet, almost everyone maps the sensation of emotion in the same places in their body all over the world. So there is a physical component to emotion. And that physical component, when you look at where it's concentrated, it's mostly concentrated through the center of the body right here for most emotions. And then it kind of moves out to the limbs and all this stuff. In any case, this has some similarity to the chakra system, the wind and channel system, or the sort of the channels that qi travel through in Chinese medicine, this sort of thing. So if you look at these graphs, you'll see that most of the activity is concentrated in the central line of the body, where there's all sorts of stuff, like you have lungs up here, you have a heart, you have your liver over here, your spleen and stomach and large intestine, small intestine, the what is that? The bladder, etc. Right? So you have all these organs and stuff, but strangely, you feel your emotions mostly as a column that runs through the center of the body. Okay? So part of training in being aware of different parts of the body will at some point involve becoming aware become of your emotions that are physical. Tremendously important and tremendously powerful that will later be really helpful when you're trying to do rumination meditation, which is foundation number 5, Sunday. So when you're doing rumination meditation, you're using your conceptual activity and you're using direct observation of things to generate correct understandings of things and to generate full body, full blown emotional experiences of things. And why are you doing this? Well, because most of your life will be lived up here in the material realm of emotional reactions. And so something like rumination meditation to change the surface level emotional palette to be as beneficial and helpful as possible to you in the process of training your mind, in the process of benefiting others. Things like generating universal love, universal compassion. Well, I have at least one student here who's Eastern Christian, if I'm not mistaken. And in mind training, we have very precise techniques that take you from an ordinary emotional palette, let's say, emotional reactions, systematically up to that same sort of universal concern for others that I believe you hear Jesus expressing on the cross, for example, where Jesus says, "Forgive them; they don't know what they're doing." Right? Where even in the midst of the most horrible, terrible, horrific abuse, that your first concern is the welfare and happiness of others, right? Forgive them. They don't know that this is going to be really bad for them, right? Forget about me. There are systematic ways to reshape the emotional palette so that these become your natural reactions. And that's what rumination meditation is about. At least half of rumination meditation is about that. And one of the ways that you start working that into your everyday training is that you become aware of your emotional body. And you know, oh, here's the very beginnings. Here's the very sort of like, I feel that first little bit of tingle of anger way before it fills up my whole body and makes me do stuff. Oh, I feel that little tiny movement here. And while it's this little tiny movement, now I can apply these conceptual tools I have from rumination meditation, and I can fix the anger and change it and generate something else before it fully blooms, before it blossoms. And so instead of getting angry at the people who are torturing me to death, I can generate, this is going to be so bad for them. I really hope from the bottom of my soul, from the bottom of my being, I hope it turns out well for them, even though I know they're wrong. It's incredible. Anyways, this is not just theoretical. There was I believe his book was Fire Under the Ice, if I'm not mistaken. I'm forgetting his name, sadly. But there was a Tibetan monk who was taken by the Chinese during the Chinese occupation. I think his name maybe is Palden Gyatso, maybe. He was tortured horrifically and daily in a labor camp by the Chinese for about 20 years. He was horrifically tortured. And when he escaped finally, he was interviewed by the Dalai Lama at one point, and the Dalai Lama asked him, "Were you afraid?" And he said, "I was afraid. I wasn't, I was afraid that I might lose my compassion for the Chinese." So these tools that we're going to be working with time we get to Foundation 5, building on our ability to be aware of our emotional body that we will gain naturally from scanning the body, have the potential to radically change how it is that you interact with others in the world. And that's to your benefit as well, of course. Okay. So now let's actually do the practice. Stop sharing that and we'll get into the actual practice. So I don't know if both of you who are here today are somewhere you can actually do some practice, but let's do about 10 minutes of standing practice and I will verbally walk you through it. And we may split the time for the next session between doing this seated and doing this standing, just for the sake of our poor knees and such. Okay? So let's begin. So recall all the elements of posture. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the clock. Okay, recall all the elements of posture. So your feet basically on train tracks. And then bend your knees a little bit so that your weight comes forward just a touch. See how I end up shifting forward? And now my weight is halfway, is at least, like if this is my heel, my weight is at least here. I don't want it here on my toes. I don't want it here on my heel. It's at least here towards the front of my heel. And it could even be here towards the back of the pad of the foot, right? So anywhere in there is fine. And the more tired you get, you can be more towards the front end of the heel, if that makes sense. Okay. So next, after you've bent the knees, now think about the hips. For those of you who have been training in internal martial arts, you can rotate the hips out a little bit. But when you do that, don't do this and rock your tailbone underneath you, because then you're rounding the back of the spine, which is fine if you're about to release power in internal martial arts, but it's not what you want to do for long-term standing. So let the perineum drop down like there's a huge weight pulling down between the legs. Let the natural curve of the lower back remain in place. The chest is not collapsed down and it's not artificially lifted up. The chest is just in a natural position. Same thing, the shoulders are not rolled forward and they're not artificially held back. So to use that little hack from before, if I turn my thumbs out and rotate them kind of pretty hard outward and downward, and then bring them out to the side, and then just sort of wiggle my shoulders a bit, I can release the extra tension in the arms. And then relax the shoulders. And see, they're not all the way back, they're not all the way forward, they're just sort of resting where they should be in the socket. And then you just let the hands hang down. Now for the neck, as I described before, if this is the center of my skull, if this is the center line of my skull running this way, I'm going to hear the line that's on the quarter way back here, and I'm lifting from right here to open up this joint at the top of the back of the neck. All right. So from here, we now stand. And start by putting your awareness in your feet. Mere awareness, just aware of the sensations. Now the ankles, the lower calves, upper calves, knees, lower thigh, upper thigh, the buttocks, front, sexual organs, the midriff, here, the waist. Now this band here, the diaphragm band. Now the upper chest band. Now we'll do the arms one at a time. Left shoulder. With the shoulder, do the top, the bottom, the front, and the back. Now the bicep, elbow, first part of the forearm, second part of the forearm, wrist, palm. Now do each one of your fingers individually. So your thumb, pointer, middle, ring, pinky. And now move to the other side. So right arm, shoulder, do the top, the bottom, front, and back. Now the bicep, elbow, first part of the forearm, second part of the forearm, wrist, palm, thumb, pointer, middle, ring, pinky. And now do the neck. So the lower part of the neck, middle part of the neck, upper part of the neck. And now just scan your head and your face. So do the difficult parts first. Just do the back of the head, the top of the head, the left side of the scalp, the right side of the scalp. Now start working on the face where you have a lot more nerve endings. So your left ear, right ear, forehead, left eye, right eye, nose, left cheek, right cheek, chin, your lips. And now very quickly, just sort of mentally scan through your teeth. If you can't get them all, that's okay. Now your upper palate, your lower palate, inside your cheeks. And I think we have time to go down the body. So starting from the top of the head now, top of the head. And just do the face as one sort of unit. The top part of the neck, middle part of the neck, bottom part of the neck, left shoulder, bicep, elbow, forearm, wrist, palm, and do all the fingers. Right shoulder, bicep, elbow, forearm, wrist, palm, all the fingers. The upper band of the chest, the middle band, the diaphragm band, all the way around, the waist band all the way around, front of the hips, back of the hips and the buttocks, sexual organs, upper thigh, lower thigh, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and extra credit, you can do your toes if you can get down there. Okay, So that'll do it for this session. In between this session and the next, you can roll the extra notes if you'd like for body scanning. And in the next session, we're not going to cover a whole lot of instructions. We're going to jump straight into the practice, and we're going to do some standing, some seated body scanning. And it probably won't be until the second half of the day that we then try to sit with full awareness of the whole sphere of the body, the whole sphere of bodily awareness. So focus for now on the body scanning instructions. Okay? All right. I'll see you in about 30 minutes.